Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time to review Nosferatu. This is the latest adaptation of Dracula from Bram Stoker, taking on the name of the silent film, the first adaptation. But really the film feels wholly original because we have Robert Eggers at the helm, bringing all of his unique sensibilities, including his art house sensibilities. Make no mistake, there was no compromise in the artistic vision that Robert Eggers generally brings to his films, and this upgraded, I guess, larger budget, somewhat IP production. This absolutely feels like a film that A24 could have made, but you can also see that it looks a little more expensive than his other films, and that's really exciting. First and foremost, this film is exceptionally well crafted. I think it may be Robert Eggers' most impressive film to date. I don't know if it's more impressive than The Lighthouse.
Than The Lighthouse?
The Lighthouse cinematography I thought was like absolutely
that's
out of
fine.
this world.
Well, let's say, you know, on a multi-dimensional level, like not just the cinematography, but like the costumes, production design.
Yeah, and no, I do agree in some ways I was most impressed.
The whole first act, I was just incredibly captivated by the tone, the atmosphere, the way that it creates these haunting images. The architecture of like Nosferatu's castle was incredible, like just the production design, you know, huge shout out there. There were many locations that felt like extremely detailed and period accurate, as well as just being really fucking haunting, like just locations that in themselves are what's frightening about the film. I think the costumes were exceptional, like just gorgeous to look at. The sound was always doing something interesting. I mean, sometimes it was like really low in the background, which is maybe my favorite kind of sound, where it just is creating a little bit of like a soundscape. It's kind of lulling you. It did that sometimes, maybe less so towards the end. Like it did get a bit noisy for me, maybe and a little bit shrill at times when the movie was like going harder with the jump scares, that sort of thing. But the sound was often very abstract and expressionistic.
Yeah, I think as with all of Eggers' films, the experience really burrows its way into your brain. I loved how in the first act, it felt like this character was getting pulled into Dracula's castle. It felt like he was kind of being hypnotized, and I along with him.
Maybe I got that more actually in the first part of the film than in the latter half.
No, I agree.
And maybe I was kind of missing that actually in the latter half, where there was this dreamlike quality, an ethereal quality that I was like absolutely digging.
I think that it does have that in other scenes though, especially when the film goes monochromatic, lots of dream sequences. Whenever Bill Skarsgård's Dracula is on screen, I feel like I am being lulled in by just the power of his voice and his menacing presence.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about the voice of Nosferatu, because his image is interesting here, but it's actually more his voice that you will take away from the film. Bill Skarsgård does some absolutely incredible voice acting here. And also the way the sound team mixed his voice, where it's kind of like all around you. It was a really incredible aspect of the film that I didn't see coming. He lowered his voice to play this character. Every single delivery, like you said, it kind of entrances you.
His accent and the rolling R's, like it's insane.
There's a lot of R rolling in all of Eggers' films, it seems.
I want to listen to Nosferatu read me audiobooks.
I also really want to shout out the cinematography. There are just so many images that were absolutely like stunning. Some of them are in the trailer, like the one where his shadow is moving across the city. I don't know if that was made with a miniature, but it looked incredible.
Yeah.
There are just other shots where his shadow is like playing on the walls and the shadow of his hand. But also the shots when Nicholas Holt's character is traveling to the castle were just amazing, like some of the best in the film, that felt very like they're out of a nightmare.
There are a lot of really impressively choreographed shots too, where the shot turns into another shot.
Robert Eggers has a very specific style of blocking his actors, and so the scenes are often like in 90-degree angles. And I really liked how they would just play out in one take, but the actors and the blocking would like take different shapes. And we really don't get any over-the-shoulder shots in Eggers' films, do we? It's really just medium shots, or it's like something with all the characters in the frame. I respect this kind of formal style that he approaches his blocking with. Like it's very distinctly his voice. The score was also quite ambient. Like I can't take away a specific piece of music, but it was kind of embedded into the sound as well.
The score was nice. It had a lot of eerie strings.
Yeah, I think it was also very noisy. Like that and the sound design were often like together and being noisy. This is a great film to see in the theater too, because it just feels kind of like darker. It just is a darker movie.
It's a movie to watch in a dark room on a very detailed screen without any compression. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think even the trailer doesn't do it justice, like seeing the trailer on my phone, for example. Also, the candle lit and torch lit scenes looked incredible. The way that the light bleeds onto the frame. I haven't seen candlelight cinematography look that good in a long time. But I gotta say, as far as the story goes, I was less invested in the second half. And I think the reason is because I was seeing the story as like, all right, this is just Dracula's film. Like, it's just gonna be him, like, getting what he wants, and it's just, no one can do anything about it. And I'm kind of here for it. But then I feel like the story tries to do something else where it wants to make us sort of like suddenly be in the main couple's shoes and like trying to figure out how to subvert the vampire or like see how they can get around it. I just didn't buy, one, that their love was like that strong. And I didn't know we were supposed to be invested in this love story. I don't because I felt removed from it. But I actually do think it was like a point that the film wanted us to feel.
I'm not sure.
Well, maybe you not being sure kind of fills my point as well.
I think there was one scene with the couple that I found to be really interesting, and maybe there could have been more of that. And what I think there could have been less of is this side plot with like Ralph Ineson, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Willem Dafoe kind of trying to figure out what's going on in this town, figuring out what the deal is with this Dracula, because we as the audience can see what's going on.
And we also just accept what's going on. I didn't completely dislike that subplot because I liked Willem Dafoe's character a lot. And by the way, Willem Dafoe gives a great performance here. Every time he's on a screen in any film, it's just pure, unadulterated joy. He's just so reliable and perfect. His accent in this film is also incredible. Second best voice in the cast. And I like the scenes when he is interfacing with others and like trying to understand what's going on.
No, I agree with that.
So it's not that I don't like all the scenes in this. I just thought it was maybe a little too much. And at certain points, I felt like I had seen the same scene 20 minutes ago. And it wasn't all to do with that either. I thought also some of the dream sequences with the vampire felt like we had already seen them. I would just say there was probably not 2 hours and 20 minutes worth of story. But I do think it really sticks the landing. Like, I think the film knows what it had going for it. It sticks the landing.
I think that, like a lot of horror movies, it goes a bit too far into the logic than I want it to, and maybe there's a couple scenes that feel a bit expository when something I really liked about that first third was just this entrancing quality, just building the atmosphere. I could have just done with more mood setting scenes. So there's one scene where a character walks out into the hallway and she's just kind of like, oh shit, like, I'm kind of scared. And then the camera's kind of moving around the hallway. That kind of haunting dread was something that I wouldn't have gotten tired of if there was more of it.
Well, I think there was a lot of it. There was just other stuff that didn't feel like it was part of the best version of the movie.
It could have been that the movie was just a little too long. Yeah, it could have been that.
There's also a lot of gnarly shit in here that I had a lot of fun with. I had a really good time watching this overall. I also like that there was a sense of humor. The way that it sets up the plot, I felt a little bit of a remove, but in a delightful way, where I'm watching something a little bit silly and I'm watching silly men. And I feel that way sometimes when I watch like a Paul Thomas Anderson film like Phantom Thread and The Master. Like, they're full of, you know, kind of silly men. And I just like that. It just makes me kind of chuckle. And there's also a couple of really good Willem Dafoe lines that made me laugh.
Lily Rose Depp goes apeshit here.
Yeah, her physical acting is absolutely insane. It's some of the best physical acting in a horror movie that I've ever seen. Even scenes where she's in close-up, like she's really selling this person who is tortured by a fucking demon in her dreams. She was perfect in this movie.
Yeah, it was a wonderfully tortured performance. And I like Nicholas Hoult a lot too.
Yeah.
His deeper insecurities play really well on his face. My takeaway from the movie was that it was like a damn good time. It was a great feel-bad,
Dreadfest,
gothic time at the movies, in the hands of a great filmmaker with a fucked up mind. And so I think you should gladly be willing to, you know, hand over your money and go see this movie in a dark theater. And I give it an 8 out of 10.
I would also give this an 8 out of 10.
We're filming this review on November 11th, and at this point, there's a bit of awards chatter and curiosity around the film. I see no reason that this film is going all the way to the Oscars in terms of like best picture, best director, above the line, major across the board contender. It's not like clearly Eggers' best film or anything.
People who like Eggers' films are going to love this. And if his films left you a little behind in the past, you are at risk of maybe feeling the same way. I also don't think this is going to play super well with audiences. I think audiences are going to be a little more checked out than like Letterboxd and critics.
And it'd be insane for anyone to have thought it would be otherwise. This film does have a bigger budget to it, and it's going towards all these incredible crafts. And so the crafts are awards worthy here, as is the case with lots of films like Nope or Hereditary or what have you. I mean, if you're not really an Oscars geared movie, you can just get snubbed everywhere and they don't really care.
Like, yeah, but the difference here is that this is also a period piece, and it's a really well crafted and detailed period piece.
And it's coming out in Christmas.
So there's some potentials here. And I think there's 4. But I would say before I name the 4 I think it could get, I don't think this is going to get more than 2 nominations, and I think it's most likely going to get 1 or 0.
I think so.
But the most likely nomination I think this will get is makeup, especially in the very end. Like there's just some really incredible makeup here, and what a great year for horror films that we even have 2 films in contention for best makeup at the Oscars.
Yeah, I mean, you have Bill Skarsgård, utterly transformed, absolutely grotesque creature.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that the makeup branch likes, is when somebody's unrecognizable due to makeup, and they have nominated Dracula films before, so that's the most likely nomination, and one I'm leaning towards predicting at the moment. I think cinematography is the second most likely. Of course, The Lighthouse was nominated, but I think that had an easier time getting in due to being black and white, but this film has some really impressive monochrome cinematography, and especially some of the shadow work here that we mentioned, I think could put it in the conversation for sure, but you never know. It's hard to get into this category if you're not like a Roger Deakins level cinematographer and your movie's not anywhere near Best Picture.
It would be worthy, absolutely. And I do think there's a chance. And cinematography, we have room. There is room. It's not that hard for this to squeeze in because of the competition. Categories like costumes and production design, they're going to be harder to squeeze into because there's more competition. I think production design was absolutely stunning. I mean, the way they did Count Orlok's castle, I think that's enough for it to be considered. But that's a harder category to get into as well if you're not contending in larger categories like Best Picture. The costumes, I think, were also superb, but it doesn't quite match the scale of some other films contending in this category. So those are kind of iffy, but they're worthy of being considered. I don't think sound and score are really prospects for this film. It'd be weird to nominate a horror film that has great use of sound for like a sound nomination unless you were, again, like in Best Picture. Those are the prospects on the table. It'd be nice if Bill Skarsgård could be considered for supporting actor. Like, I would support it. Lily Rose Depp, that'd be a great nomination, but it's probably not going to happen as well.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
What do you want the vampire to do to you?